Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. On today's episode, we've got two great talks. They always come in pairs here at Founder University. The first talk is about the importance of a co-founder and how to identify the right one for your startup. Here's what you're going to learn. Number one, what you should look for in a co-founder, right? Compatibility. And two, where to find that co-founder. And three, lastly, and most importantly, how to recruit them to join your startup, how to close the deal, how to convince them, right? These are the three steps. What you're looking for, where to find them, and how to close the deal. Okay, that's your first talk. Then we go to the second talk, and we've got an amazing talk from our friends at Microsoft who are going to talk to you about building your MVP. Here's three things you're going to learn in that talk. Remember, Founder University, 2 talks every episode, 3 things you're going to learn. 1, how to test your ideas and iterate quickly, right? You want to test and iterate. That's how you get success. Number 2, how to increase your operational efficiency so you can go faster. And 3, how to determine which architecture and stack to use to build your MVP when you're at that first stage, that early stage as a startup. All right, let's get into it. Let's start learning.
Hey, y'all. I'm Kelly, and in this episode of Founder University, the podcast, we're going to run through how to find a co-founder for your startup. At the highest level, your search should be centered around finding a co-founder where they spend time, perhaps in person or online. Too long, don't read. Go where they are. On the agenda today, we'll cover things like why do you need a co-founder and what should you look for? We'll focus on where to find a co-founder and then how to recruit them. And I'll leave you with a few resources at the end to get you started in your co-founder search. Let's go. What should you look for? Hiring a co-founder or a founding team. And before you get started in your search, you should really consider hiring a founding team instead. Hiring a founding team rather than a co-founder means you can continue to own more of your business and maintain more control. And you'll have an easier time parting ways if it doesn't work out. Having said that, there are also perks to having a true co-founder. Like if you've worked with the person and you want to have them as a co-founder, just do it. Or if they bring experience that is mission critical to your business, you may want to have them fully bought in. Like if you're building an AI tool and you're an operator, having an AI expert as a co-founder is a good idea. There are pros and cons, so think about both before making a decision and figure out what's best for you. So why do you need a co-founder? Simply put, you're just one person. It's lonely, there's so much to do, and so little time. Having a co-founder allows you to add complementary skills. If you're a builder, try to find an operator. If you aren't technical, bring someone on who is. Not only will having more skills in-house allow you to move faster, it'll be cheaper. You'll have a sounding board. Another person in the room to bounce ideas off of is a great thing early on. You'll be testing and iterating constantly. Another brain, another set of eyes, another person to tell you your baby is ugly is really huge. Plus, you'll double your capacity. You can split the work. For example, if one founder is talking to customers and selling, the other can be building the MVP, iterating on it. And when it comes time to fundraise, it is a full-time job, y'all. Fundraising while being a solo founder takes you away from everything else that needs to happen and needs to get done in your business. So having a co-founder or a founding team ensures that customer emails are still getting answered. Maybe new features are getting released. You can test different price points while you're fundraising. All of those good things can continue on while you focus your energy elsewhere. And another big thing here is time off. Founders are all about the grind, but at some point you have to take time off. You'll have to focus on things other than your startup at some point, whether that's because you're sick, you have a family emergency, it's a crazy time of year for you, all of these different things. You will at some point need a moment off. Having more than one founder means that if you are off for a day, that company doesn't stop for the day. You can continue on even while you're not working. And investors benefit from all of these things too. In many ways, it's less risky for the investor when you have more than one founder. There's lots of good resources online to talk about this. But really, if you have 2 or 3 founders and one needs to step away for any reason, a small amount of time, a big amount of time, the business doesn't need to shut down temporarily or entirely just because you have a founder who needs to step away. And for investors, that means that their investment isn't going to go to zero. So keep that in mind. What should you look for? There's a great video of Jason talking about finding complementary skill sets in our Founder University content, and I'll include that in the resources, so check it out after this. Here's the high level. First and foremost, they should be a doer. In the earliest days of a company, idea people aren't really useful. As we just talked about, they should have a skill set that complements yours. Build, sell, or operate. 2 salespeople are going to have to outsource building, which is expensive in cost and time. 2 builders are going to have an uphill battle to learn how to sell the product and grow the business. So be hyper aware of who you're targeting in your co-founder search and be sure to optimize for that skill set. Next, they should have an opinion about what you're building and what the future can look like if you're successful, not just agree with everything you say. And this one is so important. They need to be in it to win it. If you are serious about bringing your idea to the world, you need a partner who is committed and will put in the work to make it happen. You should agree on what success looks like. Are you striving for a unicorn business that goes public, or are you happy with an exit that brings a couple million? That really makes a difference. Be on the same page. So where do you find this person? First, look close to home. Start with your network. Many successful founding teams met in school. Many met when they worked together. You can also look to your friends and family. Having a working relationship and experience tackling problems in a working environment will have your founding team start on second base. But if you already know your co-founder, beware. Co-founder breakups are tough and can take a toll on the relationship. So before you commit, make sure that they truly bring value, not just convenience. So where do you find one? In Real Life is a great place to start if they're not already in your network. Go where they are. Depending on the skills you're looking for, you can make some assumptions about where you can meet them. If you're looking for a builder, try a hackathon, for example. Networking and industry events are a great place to look. Most cities have startup events and co-working spaces that'll host social hours and events that you can attend without a full membership. And depending on your company, there may also be some industry events where you can meet lots of folks interested in potentially solving the same problem you've identified. They might even be aware of it and have their own opinions. But if none of these work, don't worry, there are more places to find a co-founder. These days, you can meet almost anyone online. Online communities are a great place to target your co-founder search. So let's dig into a few. Twitter. Founders and VCs love Twitter. Look for folks who are talking about the problem you're trying to solve, engage with their content, send a DM. If you're not sure how to find them in the noise of Twitter, try finding some relevant Twitter lists. If you're not sure how to find these, let me guide you. In Twitter, pull up that feed, click on that photo on the upper left-hand corner. Select lists, click Show More under Discover New Lists, and select a few to view. Now, hidden in here is that members. It'll give you a number of how many members are part of the list, and that is really where you're going to find these folks. These are lists that experts, sometimes journalists, sometimes other founders or VCs have put together and are going to have a really wonderful group of folks that are all related to that topic. You've got to click through to find the actual list of people. In the meantime, you can get lost in all their great content, see what they're talking about, maybe do some customer validation there. But again, go into those Twitter lists and really use those in your search. So you've checked out Twitter lists. There are more online communities to check out. Don't worry. If Twitter's not the one for you, we've got more here. Slack is a great place. There is a Slack community for almost everything these days. I've linked a list of 400 Slack groups to help you down this path and to find ones that are super relevant. Again, anytime you're joining a community, be sure, join and engage, then make your ask. Never want to jump in and just immediately start spamming the group. Really begin to participate. That's where you're going to find success here. That also brings us to Reddit and Discord. These are also really great channels. You've got subreddits for just about everything these days. I've listed a few here to help you in your first start if you have not joined these communities before. And Discord is another really great one with tons. There is a quick hack. It is called disboard.org, disboard.org. And that is going to be an easy way to search through all of the Discord online communities because there are a lot. And before we leave this area, I've got to talk a little bit about a few more of these. We have local startup boards. One here in Portland is called PDX Startup Switchboard. Most cities have some kind of online community, whether it's a Slack group or something that somebody has custom built, where founders, entrepreneurs will go and post different things. It's usually free to post. That's a great place to check out, and post for a co-founder. Even in Founder University, we've seen several founders partner up, so never rule anything out. The last area I want to focus on is co-founder matching tools. There are a lot of these online these days. If you've exhausted every other option and you are bullish on having a co-founder, there are these online co-founder matching tools. Just don't pay for these. Just don't. And you've made it. Congratulations. You have found a potential co-founder. Jason has a blog, and I've linked it again in the resources here with a bit more on how to pitch them. But here's the high level. 1, identify the skills that you have and that your startup needs. Check, we've done that. Find the people who have those skills. Check, we've done that with our online communities, our network. And then 3, have coffee with them. Meet them in person if you can. Tell them all about what an enormous opportunity you think this is. Tell them that you can't do it without them. Ask them for their feedback and tell them that they would be crazy not to join you in this wild ride. And here are all those great resources I mentioned. Be sure to check them out. There's tons of good information in here. And that's it, folks. Thank you for joining me today on this episode of Founder University, the podcast. Good luck in your co-founder search.
Welcome back. It's me again, Obi Akpuda, program manager here for Microsoft for Startups. We're going to dive into building your MVP. Now, before you built your prototype, you built low fidelity or high fidelity, either one. At this point, we're looking to take it to the next level and really just build upon what we've already done. So again, this is going to be strictly all about building that winning MVP and taking it to the next level. So hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys learned something. And as always, happy hacking. And so for the sake of this, we're going to break it down into 3 stages of innovation. And so when we talk about innovation, we talk about building a product. I like to break it down to explore, expand, and extract. And so just remember that, and we'll talk about each point as we get there. And so the first stage is explore. At this point, you should have gotten an idea of what works and what shouldn't work. But more importantly, we're finding out what does work. And so again, the biggest takeaways from this is to try ideas quickly. Again, understanding what works and what doesn't, and more importantly, be ready to either scale or pivot. No matter what, at this point, you will either scale or pivot, no matter if you want to or not. So just keep that in mind. And again, like I mentioned in the last session, you want to make sure, in the prototyping session that is, you don't want to make sure that you're open-minded, you have the flexibility to be able to pivot if needed. Second one is expand. So what got us here won't get us there. And so what I mean by that is you're not going to be able to take everything with you. And so again, the biggest takeaways from this is reducing any friction for growth. You want to eliminate scaling bottlenecks. So again, if there's there are any hurdles in the way from an architectural standpoint, you want to make sure that you're pushing that to the side and make sure that you're taking only things that are going to be delivering, immediate value, obviously. And so again, what got us here won't get you there. And lastly, mature and develop your architecture and your processes. By this point, you should be at least getting some type of CI/CD, which from a DevOps standpoint, we'll dive into later on in the presentation. But again, you want to make sure that you're creating good habits at this point from a team structure standpoint. And again, from a DevOps perspective, we'll touch into that as we get into the rest of the presentation. And so the third is extract. So again, stabilizing and getting ready for the next round. Again, if you've realized, like I talked about in the prototyping session, again, this all along, according to the product lifecycle and just the startup process as a whole, you're never going to stop. There is no, we get to this point and we're done working. And if you do that, you either exited or you probably, fizzled out. And so the biggest thing is, the biggest takeaways from this is, increasing operating efficiency. Again, that goes into the DevOps side of things. You want to make sure that as you're building, you want to make sure you're building and as swiftly and again, time and cost as effectively as possible. You want to consolidate any infrastructure and reduce risk. And so if you look at the drawing, we kind of see like an upwards progression, upward track. And so you want to make sure that you're just scaling upwards. And so again, as you scale up, you want to make sure you're reducing the risk along the way. And so think about it as that roadmap as you go across. And lastly, you want to defend any disruption by spinning out any new exploration. And so at this point, you should probably begin things and, settled as they will be as far as an architectural standpoint. And again, we'll make sure, and I'll touch into from a technical standpoint, what that architecture is going to look like moving forward. And so a big question that I get a lot of times along the way is, so again, what architecture and language should I use from a programming standpoint? So again, if you're dealing with object-oriented languages, if you're dealing with data, should I use Python? Should I use Java? Should I use this front-end framework? Should I use, the MERN stack? Again, we'll dive into in later in conversations, but for the sake of this, just throwing some out there again. To answer your question about what architecture and language should I use, it depends. By and large, it's all going to come down to the scope. It all depends on what you're building, and ultimately, your resources and your time, and your timeline rather, is going to really play a big role into it as well. to take a high level overview of from a software perspective and from a dev perspective as a whole, some of the changes in software development have, changed for the better, I will say, over the years. And so I started coding. I taught myself how to code about 9 years ago. So, to put that in perspective, it's changed a lot since I've been into it. So if people have been doing it before, they've probably seen a more vast change. But at the same time, it goes to show you that things change so rapidly. What I was doing 4 years ago is probably obsolete at this point. So again, years ago, most software applications ran as giant monoliths. So we talk about your app services, we talk about your environments, we talk about your databases, everything ran as one. And so in order to change anything, again, these monoliths ran as, single processes or, very, very clunky methodologies. And so it's just, with servers and it gets really annoying and it gets really clunky. And more importantly, it's just not a, best methodology in terms of just productivity. It gets really clunky, especially nowadays where you're dealing with so many different services and so many different moving parts at once. And so very, very slow releases. And so if you're familiar with like the waterfall methodology as opposed to like the agile or wagile or whatever they're calling it nowadays, again, hence why software was usually, updated very slowly, and there were really, really big updates, but at the same time, they weren't as, as fluent and as frequent as people would like to be. And so usually that, led to obviously a lot of, ill feelings about the product sometimes. And so those are some of the old changes, some of the, the old ways of doing software and building software more importantly. And so today these components, and again, I'll try not to get as super technical for the sake of this, but these components are slowly broken down into smaller and independent components known as microservices. And again, we'll talk about some of the examples of these in the future sessions as well. And so again, to wrap up the last couple of points, like I said, as far as the stages, the explore, expand, extract. Again, we'll use this as a frame and as a model. And as you see the the model going up and sloping up, that's just a way where you can visualize in terms of how you should roadmap your own progression and your own roadmap, if you will, moving forward. And so some of the things to really just take into consideration when you're building a winning MVP. And so for you're taking that prototype to MVP and you're building that first iteration of your MVP, or that, that first big look to the, your customers, maybe in this case, again, you want to think about three things: again, speed, cost, design. Very, very, all three important, and they're all going to be very tied into one another. So again, you want to make sure if you are building and you are trying to meet deadlines, if you are trying to do this in a timely manner, if you have a schedule, you want to make sure that you're being timely and doing that in a timely manner. So again, that goes into the planning. So again, you want to be able to have a good base and a good model to start out with. And so that'll help you get along the finish line a lot quicker. Again, cost is a really good thing to, be very cognizant of in terms of just making sure you're not breaking the bank at this point. Again, this is where you're going to start adding more pieces to it, adding more functionality, going to be adding more processes, adding more services. And so you want to make sure that ultimately at the end of the day, you're doing all of these in a cost effective way. And again, shameless plug, Microsoft for Startups and Founders Hub, and the plethora of Microsoft's products that we offer, first party offerings that we offer via Microsoft for Startups and Founders Hub will allow you to do that. And so to think everything can be done in-house in one swoop, we want to be able to make that a lot easier and more accessible for founders. Hence why we are so bullish about what we're doing here for the startups team at large. And so lastly, design, again, that goes to the biggest kind of overall thing. You want to make sure that design is making sure that it's flowing along on the way. And you want to just keep that in mind as you are completing this phase of the process as well. And so when we talk about getting started with building your MVP, the cool thing about it, it's easy enough to start with just a simple app in a database. I started out, and many other founders have started out their first iteration with just a simple app server and a database. And so it's easy on Azure as well. And so I mentioned that, from Microsoft for Startups and for Microsoft as a whole, we offer plenty of, services such as app services, as well as Azure Container Services will allow you to deploy a web front end, as well as an API that allow you to get things started. So again, you can have its own link, its own server, live, ready to go in a matter of minutes. And so we allow you to do that via Azure as well. And so once we're adding another piece as long as we go along the way. And so when we talk about the explore phase of it, we're talking about adding some of those static assets. And so again, better assets, some of the video content, the flair. If we're referring back to the prototyping session, this is where you starting to add the color and everything to it. This is when you want to add the sauce to it, as we will say. And so blogs, and any other pieces of content that'll help you market and push this. And more importantly, tell your story better as you begin to, get this out there. And so moving along to the explore phase. And so when we talk about CI/CD on the dev side of things, having a solid CI/CD, which stands for continuous integration, continuous deployment, will allow you to collaborate with devs easier, designers, and any other stakeholders on the project, while simultaneously allowing you to go to market in a timely manner. So again, we have services such as GitHub will allow you to work cross-collaboratively with teams that allow you to all work simultaneously, and allow you to really mob on this project and get you to the finish line a lot quicker. It's cleaner, trust me. And I'm pro GitHub, and so sign up for your own account, and just a great thing to have as well to work with the team and to let people know what you're doing. Just go down, pull down a branch and get to working. And so again, we talk about adding to the explore phase. Again, we're talking about monitoring your analytics side of things. Things such as error logging will allow you to understand what's going on underneath the hood, and so what's working, what's not, some of the feedback and some of the touch points. Maybe users are timing out at some point. Maybe they're dropping off or not using a certain service past a certain screen. And you want to know why, and you want to understand what's going on underneath the hood, which is monitoring allows you to do that. Again, we have services within Azure that allow you to do so as well. And then lastly, the CDN part of it. And again, that will touch on, the expansion part of it phase, which will allow you to serve any customer anywhere in the world as you look to scale your product or service. And so that's going to be super important, especially as you're looking to take it to the next level. And so that goes without being said. And so you're in luck. We offer all of this as a core startup stack here within Microsoft for Startups. And so if you want to learn more about this, check us out at aka.ms/slush/startup stack. Try to say that 3 times in a row. Again, check us out at aka.ms/slush/startup stack to learn more about some of these startup services, and as well as some of the other services that we offer for the whole Microsoft suite. Let's talk about it, and let's recap some of the things that we've learned today, and some quick fire, run and gun, run and shoot. Your early architecture should be boring, in fact. And so while startups are all about being cutting edge, your product should be cutting edge in most cases, but your architecture is not your product. So it's the way you build your product. Your architecture should be very, very solid. Whether you're early, when you're early, you want to make sure that you're optimized for speed, cost, and optionality. Boring architectures tick all of those boxes. And so you want to make sure that you're keeping it as plain Jane as you can be at this point. And so, one thing that I've seen companies do, especially looking at other companies, some people, they are looking over too much of the competition. And so I found myself early on as a founder doing that maybe a little more often than I would like to. Again, you'll never get anywhere by looking in the rear view. So just keep that in mind. And that you want to look, you want to make sure that you're getting inspiration. They're called best practices for a reason. It's not bylaws. They're not by law. You don't have to do what the other person's doing just because Facebook Meta in this case, or Microsoft or Apple, whomever is doing certain things. You want to make sure that, yes, while we can draw inspiration from one thing, your journey and, your process is a lot different. And ultimately, you're a different person than anybody else. And so I want to have some individuality with it. So your early architecture should be boring for the most part in this phase. Another big thing, focus on one important thing at a time. Please, I implore you. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people trying to pat their head and rub their tummies at the same time. And what I mean by that is, can't be good at everything all at once at the same time, especially early on. Once you're able to scale and once you're able to do one thing very, very well, and once you're able to, invest in one thing very, very well, you'll understand that, hey, once we check this box, we can move on to the next phase. It's almost like being a jack of all trades or a master of none. You want to make sure you're focusing on one thing. It's very important, especially in this early stage. One of my favorites, don't get attached. And this is the last but not least. Do not get attached. Do not get too attached. I promise you, what you've seen in the prototyping phase and what you'll see now might be completely different. What you're seeing from the MVP stage to 2 years from now might be completely different. You might be working on a different vertical. You might be different, tackling a different problem. And, it might be something that you had no idea you were going to do. And so I just say that to make sure that you understand that these things are going to be able to change. You want to have the flexibility to be able to change, and you want to be able to not be bogged down to your own, your ideas and getting your way too much as it pertains to creating something new. And again, innovation is all about keeping an open mind and in a very, very high regard. So I can't say that enough in terms of just don't get it too attached and just make sure that, you're keeping your eye on the prize, but at the same time, being able and being acceptable and just being open-minded is going to take you a long way. So just take that from somebody who's been attached to things way too many times. And so, again, want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully, you've learned from taking something from a prototype to MVP. You've learned some more about some of the architecture by and large and some of the best practices around just setting yourself up for success as pertains to building out that next stage. And so from taking stuff from prototype to MVP, you got to this point. And so again, as always, feel free to check out the link below, aka.ms/slush/architecture to learn more about some of the offerings that we have here within Founders Hub and Microsoft as a whole. So again, as always, I'm Obi Akpuda signing out from Microsoft for Startups. Happy hacking.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up today's episode. If you want more tactical content, that's what we do here at Foundry University, things that you can apply at your startup today, or even a mid-sized or large company. Maybe you're at a big company. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube or on your favorite podcast player. And if you've got an MVP or an idea and you want to build it into a company, we have a 12-week Founder University program. You can apply to it, founder.university/apply. We've invested $25,000 into each of about 20 companies now to help them grow. And that's why we do Founder University. We want to meet founders early and get to know them. We trade all this knowledge to the founders. And sometimes they turn them into very big companies and they let us invest a little bit of money in their companies, which we love to be in partnership with founders. So again, you can apply for the upcoming cohort at founder.university/apply. And if you want to present your own tactical talk here on this pod and you think you got what it takes, you can submit your presentation at founder.university/submit. Yeah, just make a little presentation, send it to us. If it's really good, you might just get that phone call. Okay, we'll see you next time.